lot of protest here in the last couple of weeks. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that was the big protest in New York City that you just saw at the opening of the show. Now, the reason I'm talking about this first is this. Nobody really talked about it, and it's talking about climate change. Now, ladies and gentlemen, here's the president speaking at the United Nations this week on this subject.
We know what we have to do to avoid irreparable harm. We have to cut carbon pollution in our own countries to prevent the worst effects of climate change. We have to adapt to the impacts that, unfortunately, we can no longer avoid. And we have to work together as a global community to tackle this global threat before it is too late. We cannot condemn our children and their children to a future that is beyond their capacity to repair. Not when we have the means, the technological innovation, and the scientific imagination to begin the work of repairing it right now. As one of America's governors has said, we are the first generation to feel the impact of climate change and the last generation that can do something about it. So today I am here personally as the leader of the world's largest economy and its second largest emitter to say that we have begun to do something about it. I also convened a group of private sector leaders who have agreed to do their part to slash consumption of dangerous greenhouse gases known as HFCs, slash them 80% by 2050. And already more than 100 nations have agreed to launch talks to phase down HFCs under the Montreal Protocol. The same agreement the world used successfully to phase out ozone-depleting chemicals. And this is something that President Xi of China and I have worked on together. Just a few minutes ago, I met with Chinese Vice Premier Zhang Guoli and reiterated my belief that as the two largest economies and emitters in the world, we have a special responsibility to lead. That's what big nations have to do. We're partnering with African entrepreneurs to launch clean energy projects. We're helping farmers practice climate-smart agriculture and plant more durable crops. We're building international coalitions to drive action from reducing methane emissions from pipelines to launching a free trade agreement for environmental goods. And we have been working shoulder to shoulder with many of you to make the Green Climate Fund a reality. But let me be honest, none of this is without controversy. In each of our countries, there are interests that will be resistant to action. And in each country, there is a suspicion that if we act and other countries don't, that we will be at an economic disadvantage. But we have to lead. That is what the United Nations and this General Assembly is about. Now, the truth is that no matter what we do, some populations will still be at risk. The nations that contribute the least to climate change often stand to lose the most. And that's why, since I took office, the United States has expanded our direct adaptation assistance eightfold. And we're going to do more. Today, I'm directing our federal agencies to begin factoring climate resilience into our international development programs and investments. And I'm announcing a new effort to deploy the unique scientific and technological capabilities of the United States, from climate data to early warning systems. So this effort includes a new partnership that will draw on the resources and expertise of our leading private sector companies and philanthropies to help vulnerable nations better prepare for weather-related disasters and better plan for long-term threats like steadily rising seas. Yes, this is hard, but there should be no question that the United States of America is stepping up to the plate. We recognize our role in creating this problem. We embrace our responsibility to combat it. We will do our part, and we will help developing nations do theirs.
Hey everybody, now look, this is a big time issue and it's not really being talked about. Now, you're going to see about this more and more. And trust me, it's getting big. As an example, here's a gentleman at the protest on Sunday on what he's willing to do.
Piggy, you're in your home city today. What are you calling for with this march?
We're basically saying that the negotiations are not going anywhere. There's a lack of ambition, a lack of urgency, and this march is really about trying to bring a message of sanity, a message of urgency to the ministers that are arriving today at the end of the first week of the negotiations. So right now, if we leave Durban with the Kyoto being buried here, it will be a betrayal of our children and grandchildren's future. But more importantly, we need to ensure that we lay the foundation for a fair, ambitious and legally binding treaty right here and get on beyond talking, to investing in a green economy, to shift away from fossil fuels, but also to do it in a way that is good for the environment, but also good for jobs, good for poverty, and good for peace and security in the future.
You're involved in the anti-apartheid struggle in this city. Do you think it's comparable to this struggle?
Well, this struggle of averting catastrophic climate change is incomparable to any other struggle that's been fought. All the other struggles affected one country. Apartheid affected us in South Africa, or maybe a group of countries. Climate catastrophe affects every single human being on this planet. So in that sense, the struggle to avert catastrophic climate change is much more huge, much more cross-cutting, much more global. But what I hope will be the commonality is, just as during the struggle against apartheid, we never thought we would get a breakthrough solution, and people pushed and pushed and pushed, even though the cards were stacked against us, and suddenly things move forward. I hope the same thing will happen in the negotiations, where everybody is pessimistic and think it cannot move forward. I hope maybe the spirit of the history of resistance in this country might have some limited impact on the negotiations, and we can get some sort of miracle outcome, because right now it looks like it's going to take a miracle to get the progress that we need there.
And the struggle against apartheid really energized people around the world. Do you see the struggle against climate change happening in the same way?
Absolutely, and I think I want to pay big tribute to young people around the world, because young people get it, they are engaged, they are leading, and we need to create more space for young people to actually emerge in leadership. I think the current bunch of adult political, business and adult leaders generally are the biggest bunch of losers we have. I would say to young people, don't accept that you are leaders of tomorrow. Assert that you are leaders of today. Step forward, take leadership in front.
You got yourself arrested on an Arctic oil rig earlier this year. You've said the negotiations aren't making progress. Is that kind of action going to be the thing that pushes us forward?
I think generally right now we have to have peaceful but active civil disobedience and non-violent direct action. I anticipate the Arab Spring, the Indignados, the Occupy movement and so on is showing that citizens have had enough with the dominance of our political processes. The decisions we make about our environmental future and so on are being taken by big corporations. They've captured power, and many of the political leaders sitting in power are basically puppets of big polluting corporate interests. So there's no question that we have to intensify our resistance, and that resistance has to include our willingness to put our lives on the line, and our willingness to go to prison if necessary. On Kern Energy, the good news is, as we were here yesterday, we heard that Kern Energy is not going back to the Arctic. They didn't find oil, and their share price has plummeted, so there must be a God somewhere.
Ladies and gentlemen, he's willing to go to jail over this, and that says a lot. People care, they know it's a big issue, and we're going to see how many people get involved later on with this. Now, even more protests this week. Here's what's going on in China.
If there is only the class strike, it's not enough. We think we should have more non-cooperation movement, and if it's civil disobedience, that we can force the government to listen to our views and to have the changes in the NPCS decision.
I want to tell them we will not just say yes to whatever they do. We will fight for our rights and fight for our democracy.
You're probably wondering why I'm bringing this up. This has to do with the former Commonwealth of Hong Kong. Now, the people there want democracy. Now, they want to keep the Chinese government basically out of it. Now, the people there, they know when they quote-unquote handed back the keys, that was probably going to end. But they want to keep it there. And now the world's really not watching this yet, but they're going to watch. And it's going to be interesting to see what they're going to do. And also this week, there was a protest out in Colorado with the students. They're in their second largest school district. Now, in this short little video that I found, here's how they're doing it. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Denver. Now, this all started last week with a sick out by the teachers, and it's gone into the students now. Now, if you're wondering, this is all over curriculum there. They want to change it around to have pure American, basically how you want to say it, pride in their curriculum. But the students and the teachers there, they also want accurate history. They don't want it broad brushed. They don't want it sugar-coated. They believe that they have a right to know exactly what happened in this country, and I agree with them. Now, in Texas, they have this issue right now. And I read another article in South Carolina this is going on. Now, as far as Denver, on the other hand, hear what a student there said, and I quote, "I don't think my education should be censored. We should be able to know what happened in our past." Now the person who said that, her name is Tori Liu. I apologize for looking at the camera. She is very concerned about this. And trust me, we all should be. Because when all these protests, people will start standing up, looking, and they will listen, and something will happen. You probably wonder who's in that graphic next to me. That is P.T. Barnum. Now, back then, he allegedly said, or referenced as saying, or credited as saying, there's one born every minute. And I'm here to talk about, in this social commentary this week, the iPhone. Now, before anybody jumps all over me about the folding in the iPhone, I'm not going down that particular road, because I don't want to hear the fanboys on either side talking about it. I'm talking about the stupidity of people putting them in microwaves. Now, I'm going to be the first person to admit, I honestly thought that was a straight rumor that people were doing that until I saw the videos on it. Now, I'm not going to post any of those videos, but I will provide links in the description below. But my question is, how are people this stupid? I really want to know. I mean, the first thing popped in my head, comically, was gremlins. They threw the gremlin in the microwave and it exploded. I was thinking the exact same thing. Now, fortunately, it really didn't happen. But come on, guys. You should know better than that. Are we that led by sheep for that to happen? Give me a fucking break. And I hate to use language like that, but it's the truth. Are you guys that big of suckers that you can get suckered in to something like that? And I'm going to leave it at this. You guys know better than that. Use some common sense. Or is common sense gone the way of full service gas? We're back in the final segment, ladies and gentlemen. Now I'm going to talk about a subject today that happened this week. You know, Fullscreen got bought out by AT&T. Now I'm not going to talk about the whole Ma Bell's back. I've covered that before. But I'm going to talk about today that changing views and aspects of the internet, and specifically in this case, YouTube. YouTube, as far as their parent company Google, is a conglomerate. Now you look at with Fullscreen, and let's be honest, it's called a multi-channel network, or MCN. Now these big conglomerate companies are buying up these MCNs for one thing, and that's cheap content. It's basically the reality show philosophy of basically getting content that costs virtually nothing and making huge profits off of the backs of somebody else. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what's going to happen as far as that. Now, right now, I'm part of MCN, and that's Freedom, which a lot of people already know about that. But if you're going to start seeing this, big conglomerates buying up these MCNs, it's going to spell doom and gloom for everybody out there to watch video. And it's not just YouTube. It's going to be the Daily Motions. It's going to be the Blips and a lot of other smaller ones that are out there. So, and one thing I learned about the internet is, if something like that happens, they will drop you like a hot rock. Guaranteed. And you're going to see that happen probably. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as I wrap this up, I'll give some news and updates. Now, as you know, I've had equipment problems. Now, I bought a camera. It's an SJ4000. Now, I'll provide a link below to Techmon on his video on the review, and that's what sold me on this camera. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to show you a video that I took last week at the Highland Square Porch Rock Festival, and you can judge for yourself.
Thank you. Wow, it's a gorgeous morning, isn't it? You gotta love fall in Ohio, because when you get a good day, you get a great day. So again, we're the Acton Katie Band. We're going to be playing lots of Irish tunes, a couple Scottish, and anything else we throw into the mix. So thanks for joining us this morning.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was the video. Now, I know it's kind of at a bad angle, a little bit farther away, but I'm very happy with this camera. What I'm not happy about is when I plug it up to use it for this show, I can't get it to zoom in. So that's one of the reasons why last week I didn't have a show. There was a lot of technical issues. Now, hopefully, in 2 weeks, I should have that fixed. So there's no show next week. So I'll keep everybody in the loop as far as that update. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for this week. I thank you for watching. And always be careful. And remember, fear the root.